welcome to your deep dive today.
Oh, cool.
We're going to be looking at something pretty interesting.
Okay.
We have an excerpt from a book chapter,
All right.
and this chapter details the author's journey of self-awareness and pain management during recovery from a pretty serious illness.
Wow, that sounds pretty intense.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah?
What I think is so interesting about this
Okay.
is that the author uses this really unique lens
Uh-huh.
to look at the experience.
Yeah.
Imagine, like, facing a health crisis
Right.
so severe
Right.
that it, like, forces you to see your own body as separate from yourself.
Wow.
Like a machine.
Looks like you're looking in from the outside.
Right.
That's fascinating.
That's what we're going to be talking about today.
I love that concept.
So this concept
Yeah.
of the machine body,
Okay.
it really grabbed my attention. I mean,
Yeah.
you wouldn't think
Right.
that someone dealing with a serious illness
Uh-huh.
would feel detached from their physical experience.
Yeah, you would think it would be the opposite.
Yeah.
You'd think they would be
You would think they'd be hyper aware of everything.
hyper aware, yeah.
Yeah.
And really focused on the body.
Right.
But in this case, it seems like they're almost taking a step back,
Exactly.
detaching a little bit.
That seems to be exactly what happened here.
So interesting.
So do you think that this detachment
Trey?
could actually be a coping mechanism?
Oh, absolutely.
Would it distance themselves
Okay,
from
right.
the experience?
Yeah, I think that's a really,
From the intensity of the experience?
that's a great question. And I think that's a really valid interpretation of what might be happening here.
Awesome.
You know, it's hard to imagine what it would be like to be in that situation, but
Yeah.
it makes sense to me that that could be a way of coping.
Right. And what I find even more intriguing
Okay.
is that the author,
Mm-hmm.
even though they describe this detachment,
Yeah.
they also report a heightened sensitivity to internal sensations.
Oh, that's interesting.
So it seems
So they're detached, but still...
they're detached, but still really aware.
Yeah, like a
Right.
weird paradox.
Paradoxical, right?
Totally. Like they're zoomed out,
Mm-hmm.
viewing the body as a machine,
Okay.
but also still hyper aware
Yeah.
of every little thing happening.
Of every little
What can
change happening on the inside.
Right.
Right.
It's really fascinating.
So that brings us to one of the most,
Yeah.
I think, most fascinating parts of the chapter,
Right.
which is the placebo event.
Okay. The placebo event.
So this is where we see this awareness put to the test
Okay.
in a very concrete way.
Yeah.
The author was deliberately trying to manage their pain
Okay.
without relying on medication.
Makes sense.
And then comes this moment
Right.
where the nurse
Oh,
leaves supplies behind.
okay.
It's almost as if setting the stage
Like a hint.
for something unusual to happen.
Or like they're in on it.
Right.
Yeah.
It's like a scene from a movie.
I know, right?
And I think the author is
Yeah.
picking up on these subtle cues.
Okay.
So, like, their awareness is extending beyond their own body.
Oh, wow.
So, like, the actions
Right.
and intentions
Stuff everyone around them.
of the people around them.
That's wild.
Then the pain starts to escalate.
Okay.
And there's this whole conversation with the author's dad.
Uh-huh.
And it turns out the medication
Oh my gosh.
that they thought they were receiving
Wait.
was actually a placebo.
Oh.
It wasn't real medication.
So they thought they were getting it,
Yeah.
but they weren't.
They thought they were getting real medication.
That's crazy.
And it's a placebo.
Wow.
And the author
Yeah.
figures this out on their own.
That's amazing.
The doctors are even surprised
Really?
by how attuned they were
Wow.
to their internal state.
So they could tell the difference
Yeah.
between the placebo and the real meds.
Yeah.
Wow.
They knew
That's
how to
incredible.
distinguish
Yeah.
between a placebo and real medication.
Wow.
So
What does that tell us about, like,
it really makes you think
a power
about the power of the mind,
mind, right?
doesn't it?
Yeah.
It's like the author had developed this
Like a superpower.
superpower,
Yeah.
the ability to not only detach from pain,
Uh-huh.
but also to recognize and manage their body's response to it.
Wow. Yeah, that's amazing.
And this ability to manage pain
Yeah.
without medication
Oh, okay.
continued even after the placebo event.
Really?
So they essentially weaned themselves off pain meds entirely.
So they didn't need them anymore.
It's pretty remarkable.
That is incredible.
It really challenges our assumptions about what the human mind can do,
Right.
especially when faced with these physical challenges.
Yeah, especially when you're talking about something like pain,
Right.
which we think of as being so physical.
Yeah.
But this shows that the mind can play a huge role.
This makes me think about the chapter title,
Okay.
Truth Beyond the Pain.
Oh, interesting.
What do you think the author's getting at here?
I think it's about, like,
You know,
Going deeper than the surface level
yeah.
of the pain
Okay.
and finding something more meaningful.
Okay.
So I think this placebo incident is like a
Yeah.
small example of
Yeah.
that larger theme.
So it's a microcosm of the whole chapter.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh.
Like the author's not just describing the physical recovery,
Right.
but they're searching for something deeper.
A truth
Yeah.
that transcends
Simone.
the immediate experience of pain and healing.
Right.
So do you think this heightened awareness,
Okay, that's a good question.
is it a side effect of the illness?
Hmm.
A coping mechanism?
Maybe.
Or is it something even more profound?
I don't know. It's hard to say.
Okay.
It could be any of those
All
things.
right.
Or even a combination.
Or a combination of those things.
Right.
Right.
The author uses this phrase, soul detachment,
Oh, wait.
to describe the experience,
That's an interesting phrase.
which I think adds another layer
Soul
of
detachment.
mystery to the whole thing.
That really stuck with me, too.
Yeah.
Um,
It sounds
and
almost
soul detachment.
spiritual, doesn't it?
It does.
Yeah.
And what's interesting
Yeah.
is that this wasn't the author's initial interpretation of their experience.
Oh, so they didn't.
It was a realization that came later
Think of it that way at the time.
as they reflected on what happened.
Oh, wow. So maybe it's like a way of...
So maybe
it's-
soul detachment is the author's way
Yeah.
of trying to make sense of this shift,
Uh-huh.
this feeling of being both deeply connected to the body
Right.
and somehow separate from it at the same time.
Yeah, it's like holding two opposite ideas in your mind at once,
Right.
which is, I think, kind of the heart of this whole thing. Like, how can you be detached
Yeah.
and hyper aware at the same time?
Yeah. And I think we're going to delve deeper into all these ideas
Okay, sounds good.
as we continue our deep dive.
I'm intrigued.
Yeah, me too.
You know, as we kind of dig deeper into this whole soul detachment thing,
Yeah.
it's important to remember that the author doesn't like tie it to anything specific,
Okay.
like a religion or belief system.
Yeah.
It seems more like just a
Right.
description of a personal experience. So it's something we can all relate to,
Right.
even if we haven't been through something as intense as what the author experienced.
Right.
Think about a time when you were like really absorbed in something, maybe playing music or writing,
Yeah. Yeah.
or even just having a really interesting conversation.
Yeah, I can relate to that.
You lose track of time.
Mm-hmm.
Your sense of self kind of fades away and you're
Yep.
just in the moment.
All right.
And in those moments,
Yeah.
there's like a kind of detachment
Yeah.
from like our worries and stuff.
Okay.
Now imagine that feeling amplified,
Okay.
extended to include your body.
Wow.
So maybe soul detachment is like an extreme version of that,
Oh.
brought on by like the crazy circumstances
Maybe
of
not.
their illness.
So it's like the same mental state
Yeah.
just turned up to 11.
Yeah, exactly.
And it makes me wonder if those altered states
Uh-huh.
are something we can like access intentionally.
That's the question, isn't it?
Yeah.
Can we just decide to have those experiences?
Yeah.
Or do they just happen
Right.
when the conditions are right?
Right. And you mentioned that the author was pretty young,
Yeah, like 17.
17 when all this happened.
Yeah.
That's a pretty like
Formative time.
formative time, right?
You're still figuring out who you are.
Right.
And then to have this major health crisis,
Yeah.
it's got to have a huge impact.
On how you view the world.
Yeah, like your whole worldview could shift.
Right. And the author's looking back on this years later.
It's like they're processing it all again.
Right. With the benefit of hindsight.
Right. And time can change how you see things.
Yeah.
Like the author wrote, I could feel the molecular changes it was causing within.
Wow. That's a powerful image.
It's like they're so aware of what's happening physically,
Yeah.
but also detached.
Yeah.
It's like watching yourself go through something.
Right. And that goes back to that machine body concept.
Exactly.
Like they're observing their own body.
Yeah, almost clinically.
Right. But there's also this like,
Emotional side.
yeah.
It's not just cold observation.
Right.
They're trying to make sense of it
Right.
on a deeper level.
It makes you wonder how this experience like shaped them.
Totally.
Like their relationships, their career.
Yeah, did they become a doctor?
Right. Or a
A
scientist.
philosopher?
Who knows? Do you think this soul detachment stuck with them?
I mean, we don't know for sure.
Right.
We only have this little excerpt.
Right.
But it's definitely possible
Yeah.
that it had a lasting impact.
And I'm thinking about our listener.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they've dealt with something similar.
Yeah. Or know someone who has.
Right.
Maybe they're just fascinated by the mind.
Hmm.
Like we are, Nate.
But I think this chapter reminds us
Of what?
that even in dark times,
Okay.
there can be moments of like
That's
insight, right?
Self-discovery.
Yeah,
It's like a testament to human resilience.
right. Like we can adapt and learn
Yeah.
even when things are really tough.
And it's not just about this one person's story.
Okay.
It's about all of us.
What do you mean?
We all have this potential
Wait.
for expanded awareness.
Right,
Like
yeah.
maybe we all have this capacity
Okay.
for soul detachment.
Inside us.
Yeah. And maybe we just need to find the right key.
To unlock it.
Yeah.
That's a great point.
I think so.
As we wrap up our deep dive,
Yeah.
I keep coming back to this idea
Uh-huh.
of like soul detachment.
Okay.
Can we actually cultivate that? Or does it just happen?
It's a big question, right?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
can we choose to have those experiences?
Yeah.
People have been trying to figure that out for centuries.
I mean, there's all this research on mindfulness,
Meditation.
right?
Contemplative practices.
Yeah.
Where people are trying to train their attention to expand their awareness.
Right.
But is that the same thing?
That's what the author went through,
Yeah.
right?
That's a good point.
Seems like for them it was more
Involuntary?
voluntary.
Like it just happened
Yeah.
because of this traumatic event?
Yeah.
Makes you wonder if there's something about, like,
Okay.
facing death
Okay.
that can trigger
Wow.
these shifts.
That's intense.
It is, right?
Yeah.
Like maybe we have to go through something really difficult to access that part of ourselves.
It's like
Yeah.
people who have near-death experiences,
Yeah.
they come back
Right.
with this like totally new perspective.
Yeah.
They've seen something.
It's like they've glimpsed something beyond,
Beyond,
the
huh?
everyday world.
It's kind of inspiring,
It is.
but also a little scary.
I know.
Like, do we have to almost die
Right.
to unlock this potential?
That's the question, isn't it?
And that brings us back to the chapter title.
Truth beyond the pain.
Yeah.
Maybe it's about finding meaning
Okay.
in those difficult experiences.
Okay.
Like confronting our vulnerability
Uh-huh.
can lead to greater awareness.
Wow.
It's a powerful message, right?
It is.
And I think it'll stick with our listener
I think so too.
long after this deep dive is over.
And I think what's so great about this chapter
Mm-hmm.
is that even if we never experience
Yeah,
soul detachment,
right.
like the author did,
To that extent,
right?
yeah.
it still encourages us to pay attention
To what?
to those little moments
Okay.
where our awareness shifts, like when we feel detached
Okay.
from our normal thoughts.
Interesting.
Maybe it's when we're out in nature
Oh, yeah.
or listening to music.
Oh, like having a deep conversation,
Right.
like we were talking about earlier.
Yeah. Or maybe it's during a challenging time
Right.
when we're forced to face our limits.
Okay.
But those moments,
Yeah.
they can show us
What?
a different way
Okay.
of experiencing the world.
Interesting.
They can bring us more
Yeah.
insight.
Clarity, even peace.
It's like those moments give us a glimpse
Yeah.
of something more.
So as we wrap up this deep dive,
Okay.
I want to encourage our listener.
Yeah.
Stay curious.
Explore those moments
Yeah.
where your awareness shifts.
You never know what truths
You might find.
you might uncover.
I love that.
Thanks for joining us.
This was fun.
Yeah, this was a good one.
Until next time.
Keep diving deep.